Hey, what's up, everyone? When we're talking about survival, sometimes it's difficult to picture ourselves in that situation, and it can be interesting to look at TV shows for that kind of thing. I really like post apocalyptic TV shows, so I'm here to talk about The Walking Dead, or more specifically, survival decisions undertaken in The Walking Dead. This is a new idea I had, so if you like this video, I'm going to make more, and I'm just going to talk about Season 1 for now. I want to start by saying I'm not criticizing the show. I like the show. I'm just trying to look at it from a survival perspective and evaluate the decisions they made. And I get that certain things were done because they were relevant to the plot or character development. I'm just looking at survival. And last sort of disclaimer here, I might spoil some stuff, so you're warned. So here we go. Walking Dead Season 1. So the show starts with Rick getting shot and winding up in a hospital. We get a glimpse of the clock on the wall and it has stopped. And this is a battery powered clock, so it must have taken a long time for the battery to run out. And indeed later, Dr. Jenner says that it's been 63 days since the disease went global. I don't know what global means in medical terminology, but I have no idea how Rick is alive. 63 days, that's 2 months. Without food or water, in a coma, you would die. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's someone medically knows how this is possible, or maybe I missed something. They showed the power going out during the flashback with Shane, so I don't even see how he's hydrated. I mean, even if backup power came on, the fluids had to be refilled and his fluids had, I don't know. Anyway, we move on to him escaping from the hospital in a creepy dark scene, and then he goes out and finds himself a bicycle. I think this is really important to point out. Bicycles are great. I highly recommend anyone who considers themselves a prepper or survivalist or is interested in post-collapse to get themselves a bicycle. Bicycles, learn to ride them, learn to repair them, maybe get some accessories like a rack or a bags on the back of it. Bikes are silent. They're very abundant. It's the most common form of transportation in the world. It's easy to repair a bike. It doesn't require food like the horse, for example, that Rick takes. It's also not afraid of walkers like the horse that Rick takes. And it's just, in general, a fantastic tool. And you should be in shape enough to ride a bike in a post-collapse scenario. They don't require fuel. I mean, it's the best. Rick does eventually go out and he meets Morgan and his son. We learn about the walkers and what's going on. And his idea is to go to the city because of a possible refugee camp. Now I get his motivation, and it's worth it to still point out, in general, you totally want to avoid the cities because you can get diseases like cholera from dead bodies. This isn't just for a zombie situation. What if there was like a epidemic or something? And there's also bound to be more crime in the city, and of course more walkers. But I get it, he's looking for his family, so he goes to the city. And you get stuck inside an awkward situation inside the tank. So we move on to episode 2. Now, in episode 2, we learn that his wife and kid are alive, and that Lori is pregnant. I just want to start off with a note here. Condoms are great. They're a great addition to your survival kit. They don't take up much space, they expand, they're flexible. They could be used as tourniquets for blood flow, for instance, if you want to restrict blood flow in an injury, first aid kit situation. And they could be used as a storage container for water. And they can stop pregnancy. Pretty important. They have a long expiration date also, so the entire duration that the show has lasted so far, condoms would still absolutely function. This is a terrible mistake, getting pregnant. I mean, it's obvious, and obviously, like, it was an accident, but they should have been more careful. So eventually, Rick and the group that is in the city are able to get out of the city after handcuffing Merle. Their method for escape is just absurd to me. I'm not going to get into the logistics of whether this would work or not. I personally don't think that would ever work, the whole blood smearing on you, confusing the walkers thing. But in general, I mean, getting blood on you from anyone alive or dead in a survival scenario, or ever really, is not advisable. Diseases transfer very easily that way, and it's just a terrible idea. You gotta be careful, and if you're gonna touch blood, use gloves. Gloves are another great part of a survival first aid kit, or just any first aid kit. Any medic will tell you that. So anyway, we see that they do get away, and Rick reunites with his family. Now, their whole plan is to go back for Merle, and I think you could consider that a bad survival decision, but on the other hand, they do have Daryl in the group, and they also did leave their guns behind. So, going back for a gun/Merle rescue operation seems plausible, especially considering that Glenn was able to get in and out of the city by himself a few times. So I think that it's probably worth the risk. I can't comment much on the next situation which happens, which is the Vatos, where they have the whole run-in, which is an example of why it's undesirable to go in the city in the first place. It seems like Rick handles it well. I don't have police training to tell you whether the negotiation went well. He bluffed pretty hard. I mean, they had way more numbers on him, but whatever. It seemed to work. I do have more comments on this episode, though. Firstly, they mention here that you should be careful with fire because the flames are too high and they want to avoid detection. You can do something called a Dakota fire hole. I'm going to put the image on the screen. Dakota fire hole is a great technique. You go on Google and look it up. It conserves heat and avoids detection. It's a great technique for exactly what they're talking about. Second, during that same conversation, they talk about how time doesn't matter anymore and how Dale forgot to wind his watch. That's completely incorrect. Time still totally matters. You're not some kind of Apache Indian chief telling time from the sun or how moss grows or something like that. You have a watch. You can just wind it. You can get one from the millions of abandoned stores. Stuff could come down to the last minute. You can make plans to meet with a group at a certain time. Like, you might want to be tracking animals at a certain time. You might want to set an alarm. Time totally matters. So anyway, we get back to the camp, and there's a very interesting survival decision back in the camp. Should they go to the CDC? The CDC is a Center for Disease Control. It's not a military fort. It's not a place of refuge. You already have a group which has guns, ammo, a hunter, fishermen, cars, people with able bodies, and people with families, so they have common interests with each other, that they want to protect their kids. Going to the CDC is completely not worth it. The only sort of help the CDC can give you is a vaccine. If they had those, they would have already administered them. If they have not made it known to you that you're receiving a vaccine via radio broadcasts or emergency vehicles or aircraft, which we've seen none of, then it's a pretty safe bet you're not about to be helped in any way. My advice would be not to go to the CDC and instead fortify your camp much better. They could have done so with much better fortifications. I mean, look at Jim. Jim went crazy and started digging holes. Look how many holes he dug up. If we had all the men digging holes, digging trenches, trenches would help a lot against walkers. Or, for example, those spikes that we see later set up in the governor's camp and also Morgan's hideout. They seem to stop walkers pretty well. So you could have fortified that camp much better to avoid a big herd coming by like what happened. Also later in the series, we see they have lookouts. Yeah, lookouts is very important. You need to have field tactics and lookouts. That would have avoided the surprise like what happened with the walkers overrunning the camp. And in general in a camp, you could just sit back and wait for radio broadcasts. At this stage of the game, you don't know that society has totally collapsed. Maybe help will come. It's only been 2 months. I mean, maybe it's a serious problem, but help will come. They don't know that. So I'd say you're better off just laying low and then later try and find a more permanent solution. Anyway, they do decide to go to the CDC, and then the Hispanic family tries to leave, which I think is one of the worst decisions in this season. I mean, the Hispanic family doesn't show aptitude at anything. We don't see them using a gun. We don't see them hunting, cooking, fishing, nothing. They're just kind of side filler characters. I mean, the whole reason they want to go to the CDC, as Shane earlier mentioned, is they want to avoid a trip to another military fort, and Shane says that fort is 100 miles away. So, I mean, doing a quick Google search, it reveals that Birmingham is 150 miles away from Atlanta. So, that's even further than the fort that they're not going to avoid a 100-mile trip. So, it's just, how are you going to make that trip, you know, without your group, with two kids? Maybe they have like a state-of-the-art fallout shelter that we don't know about, but I really, really doubt that. So I think that that's a bad idea. Anyway, the rest of our heroes do go off to the CDC. And I thought this sort of dramatic Hollywood shot is a great example of a bad survival decision and the lack of good tactics in their plans. Why did everyone have to get out of the car to check? Even Carl and Sophia, like, guys, like, this is gonna get you killed. The field tactics thing I was talking about. Just have everyone in the cars, have drivers ready at the wheel, and have like two guys go out and check it out. Like, why is everyone have to get out? And the last thing is when they do get to the CDC, we just see them all having fun and getting drunk, and then after that being like, so anyway, let's talk the important issues. No, why don't you talk the important issues first and then get drunk and have fun? Getting drunk in general in a survival scenario is just not a good idea. I mean, alcohol has many uses like disinfectant and, you know, it's flammable and it'll dehydrate you, so why would you drink that instead of water? But anyway, that's it for season 1. So let me know if you enjoyed this video and I'll make more for the other seasons. I do think it's very interesting to look at the show. Not because I think it's realistic or anything, but for the record, I don't think a zombie apocalypse could even happen. But I do think that it can make for interesting conversation or train of thought from a survival perspective. And I think we can take some lessons for the show. And I do like the show, like I said. So I'm interested to see if there's anything I missed or any comments. So let me know. And thanks for watching.